and welcome back to Wednesday Night Sessions. I am, as always, your host, Mitch Nobis. I always like to make fun of myself. I totally forgot to ever say that during the first one or two episodes, which, if you know me in real life, is a very Mitch Nobis thing to do. I am thrilled. Tonight joining us is Jihyun Yun. She is a Michigan author, and we don't always focus on Michigan authors here at Wednesday Night Sessions, but we do often like to highlight folks that are kind of in our neck of the woods. So I'm doubly excited because Jihyun is a local author and has a book coming out very, very soon. I'm going to let her, well, I shouldn't say I'm going to let her. That'll be one of the interview questions at the end, not to give too much away. So we'll hear more about the book project later. And she may be planning to tell us some about it during her reading too. We'll see. But by the time this comes out, let me back up. By the time this is aired, the book will be out there. So there you go. Fire up your Literati account, your Amazon, Barnes & Noble, bookshop, wherever you get your books. Be ready. Okay, tossing it over now. Jihyun, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much for the invite, Mitch. Like a lot of 2020 authors, I was in the process of scheduling a tour, but now that it couldn't happen, I kind of didn't have the foresight to plan anything else. So this invitation from you is like a true blessing. So thank you so much again for having me. My name is Jihyun, and I'm the author of Some Are Always Hungry. It won the Prairie Schooner Prize in 2019, and it's due to be published by the University of Nebraska Press in exactly 10 days now. So I'm just going to go ahead and read a few poems from it. Okay. The first poem I'm going to read is the first poem from the book. It's called All Female. All female. At the night markets, women peddle their prices, shout in swift Cantonese over gurgling tanks of sea spawn, snails, young eels born for smoke, coal, skewers. The blood clams loll, tongues over shell lips, as we buy a bag of cockles and 3 crabs, sweet with egg. Their claws beg, puncture holes in the cherry red, please come again. At home, my women crack them open, cleave the lips' hem, plunge and snap. The men watch game shows as we wreck the girl bodies for row, and I don't know why. They are always sweeter, more pricey, Harmony says, pulling the last claw from the last crab, stumps still writhing in the sink. She dismantles the breast next, and what pulsates inside is all gully and wet. It's always the girls for everything. When was the last time you've heard of a rooster soup? We put the bodies to boil in salt and broth. Outside, the winter interrogates, our windows fogged. If our feast ever happens, if time has not misplaced us, may these girls rise violet from the pot, untangle their legs from perilla and leek, and make for the sea with their limbs and their teeth. The next poem I'm going to read is a poem called Diptych of Animal and Womb. It begins with an epigraph from Incel Reddit. Here's the epigraph. These wombs belong to us, not the idiot creatures they are attached to. They were given to us by God to reproduce ourselves with. We need to look for ways to get these stupid animals to give us back the wombs they have stolen from us. Posted to the now defunct Our Brain Cells on Reddit. 1. What flurry of knives, what small gods beasting through the needlegrass and thorn thistle, whipping the deer flies into such fury. What rare stones inside me, what tessellating skin, animal and performance. What nephrite and bug glint, blood mad and hunger. Whose womb wounds who, not you. What clot of hair and meat unzipped to sunset, poacher, What joy tears your face into a haunting? To you, the body, abstraction, cruelty, abstraction. The knife slips past the pelt, a pulsing city lifted from my belly. What beast would gift me this body and name itself God? What borrowed rib and rain? What stories? What claim over that which grows in another? 2. You, grinning as you squalor your hands on my meat. Nothing has been won. The city I will evacuate until my ruler wakes. The third poem I'm going to read is called Savaging. It begins with a definition. Verb, the ethnological term for an animal maiming or killing her own offspring. Though observed in the wild and across various species, it most severely impacts pigs bred in captivity and subjected to severe environmental stressors. Dear daughters, when the mind leaves, it leaves swiftly. Today, I woke not knowing which country holds me, or if those love motels stringing neon cords outside my window were those of Oakland or Seoul. I woke having forgotten even your faces, but remembered my hunger. What if this is all I am left with? Memories of my young body rifling through refuse at the US bases, the slow arc of a dust-bloodied moon, illuminating garbage, animal bones I pick through for their tears of toothed sinew, wads of gum studded with gristle and American spit. We did our best to rinse off the dirt, but that too is sustenance. After all, I've seen the hungry drink soup of mud and their own vomit, and if pride serves no man, then let us be animal, full and unmoored from whatever shame names us human. We boil trash in a big pot, watch the gum bloom into nothing and broth. The bone's faint bouquet of rot brought us kids to drooling. The stalk boiled itself white. We spiced it with crushed cigarette butts and wild weeds, called it gurkurijuk, or oink oink gruel after the swine we had become. To this day, nothing has ever tasted as good. Home that evening, my eldest sister seized me by the hair, throttled my face red for eating American garbage. You weren't raised like this. You weren't raised like this. But in a year, my sister, in all her beauty and pride, would be dead. It was like we already knew it back then. My girl body half transformed into a pig, screeching its pink forfeit. My sister, thrashing my wire-haired skin, weeping for all the lives neither of us would live. Thank you so much to everybody who might be tuning into this. I'm just going to read one more poem. It's the penultimate poem of my collection. It's called Reversal. Rescind the palm dash of scallion, the final blessings of ground perilla seed and sesame leaf. Unshred the crowned daisy, take the soup off the flame and kill the flame. Unsinge the bottom of the pot until your face reflects in its gunmetal glint. De-Korean the broth. Vacate its ginger and onion and garlic, its rice wine and red swelter. Restore the ground chili flakes to their unshorn forms and hang the bloodless red fruit back up in their perennials. Unwater the perennials, vines retreating to the crease of their seeds. Commit yourself to this unharvest, to the joy of unmaking. Let the soup unthicken, the starch pull back into the cells of the russets. Fish the russets out from the pork spine cages and lay them to rest back into the earth. Now, address the spines. Pick them out from the pot and lay them to grow raw across the cutting board's face. Watch it pull blood back into itself, replenish its own marrow. Love, you'll need your shoes for this. Leave the kitchen. Seek the sow and unslaughter her. But if you find the pig dismembered and cannot bear it, grant yourself permission to not tend to her rememberment. Remember, just because you are a daughter doesn't mean you must mend. Instead, let her tend to herself, her unthatched belly calling for return of lost things, bone, honeycomb maw, her clumsy animal heart until she speaks. Dear reader, I so want to survive this. Please lead me whole into another season so I may dare begin again. Thank you so much.
Wow. Thank you for sharing those. Those are incredible. The imagery is, I was kind of lost. I mean, it's, as we're recording this, these things air weeks after we record them, right? So we're recording this, it's nighttime. I'm in the basement office that's half toy room. That was very powerful imagery. Like I'm physically in a goofy space, but my brain was someplace much, much nicer. And the poem about your sister is very powerful as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your generosity.
Yeah. Sorry, my internet there for a second. I got the big warning sign that it was about to die, but we're good. We're still here. So a couple of questions for you. One, this book won a prominent prize. So some of our viewers are members of the literary community, and some aren't. We have some local people who just kind of enjoy the arts. And I forgot at the top, I always like to give a shout out to KickstART Farmington, our local arts organization that sponsors this program. So thank you to Dwayne Hayes and crew for that. And sometimes they're just people who are, interested in art and just want to learn a little bit more. So the Prairie Schooner Book Prize is a pretty big deal. So tell us about Some Are Always Hungry and how the project, started and how it felt to get that call from Kwame Dawes, the editor of Prairie Schooner, and walk us through it. We're excited for this book.
Sure. I began writing Some Are Always Hungry while I was doing my MFA program at NYU. It actually didn't, right now as the book is, it centers around the motif of a lot of recipes. So a lot of the poems will actually have like a roughly followable recipe to them with like ingredients and stuff. But before I started doing that, I was actually focusing a lot more on my feelings about having to leave my church. And that was like the main core of the first manuscript. But my advisor, Yusuf Komanyaka, seemed less interested in that. And he seemed a lot more interested in the poems where I was talking about my family and food. And I think I focus so heavily on food because it's the primary love language of my family. Rather, in lieu of saying verbally, I love you, or I appreciate you, or I'm sorry, I did something wrong, we just tend to feed each other and bring each other food. And so there's just like such a heart cord, like a tether for me with food. So I realized that that's the most visceral thing that I have to offer. And so that's kind of how this collection came to be. And I was submitting it for roughly 3 years before it was picked up. Lots of rejections, lots of personal rejections. But I never expected it to land at the Prairie Schooner Prize, because over the years, like ever since I first began to write, it's been about like maybe 9 years now since I started writing poetry, I've been submitting to Prairie Schooner like every year, several times a year. And I've actually never had a singular poem picked up by them. So when I was submitting the whole manuscript to them, it was just kind of like shot in the dark. Why not? But of course I did end up getting the phone call, and it was just unbelievable to me. So
I read somewhere at somebody's blog post or something, probably a previous winner, that in particular is a very nice phone call. I guess Kwame Dawes is very warm on the phone or something. I've heard that before, that it was like a life-changing phone call.
It was actually, I couldn't pick up the phone because I was in Korea at the time. And he tried to call me, but he couldn't reach me. And I got an email from Ashley Strassnider, who is, I believe, Prairie Schooner's managing editor. and she was like, oh, Kwame's trying to get into contact with you, but he can't reach you. So I was in my pajamas because the time difference, it was like 1 a.m. or something. But I just like saw that email and I got up and ran to the convenience store in my pajamas to get a phone card. And I called him back, just like weeping. But he was very generous. Everything beautiful about Kwame that you've heard is true.
Yeah. Oh man, that's a great story. So when the world does kind of come back and you do get to do the book tour, you've got to tell that story. Like the pajamas running down to the store for a phone card. I mean, that's like a scene from an indie movie, right? Like we need movies about poets. We got to make a movie about this.
Truly.
That's fantastic. All right, and then as the regular viewer knows, we always do kind of one craft, writerly question, and then one goofy one. And I think I saw on Twitter that you used to work in the service industry, right? And they're always, I've had many friends who have waited tables and managed restaurants and did their college stint at the Gap. And people who have worked service always have insane stories. I also have a friend who went through, the residency and did a stint as an ER doctor. And I'm not sure which stories are better, right? Like ER doctors are kind of like the famously, like these stories are insane, but like my friends in the service industry have like equally insane stories. So I know I popped this question on you with no time to prepare, but like, what's like one of the wackiest things you encountered working service?
Oh, I mean, I've been in the service industry I worked all throughout my senior year of high school until basically this pandemic in the service industry. It's a lot of crazy things. I guess like one of the things that stick out most in my mind is I worked in this like incredibly strange restaurant in Brooklyn, which is actually still around, so I'm not going to name it. But it was just like the most dysfunctional restaurant I've ever worked at. The owner he would never pay anybody on time and stuff. So I remember me and all the servers would steal the wine and the liquor and stuff. But he would also hire very strange people with no vetting. So he hired this sushi chef who would like make the most strange rolls and try to force us to sell them, like cauliflower and like nori with like beets, and like he would force us to try to sell it, and if we didn't, he would get really upset. And one day I refused to do something strange that he asked me to do, and then he went downstairs and he took his sushi knife and he cut through all of the sacks of rice and like basically just like went to town in the basement. Like we went downstairs and it was flooded with soy sauce. There was like rice on the ground everywhere. It was just like a slasher film down there. Yeah, that's probably like one of the stranger things that's happened. But it's a never ending barrage in the service industry, especially now. I mean, the stories I hear from my friends still in the industry now with like people refusing to wear masks and throwing those tantrums, it's just worse now.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. I've kind of equated COVID, our country's response to COVID is almost like a religion. So I've started telling people like, no, our household is COVID observant. Like, so we eat at the restaurant because we're COVID observant. But yeah, I've heard like just terrible things. And like, there's a brewery, we're both in Michigan, right? So Shorts Brewery up north had to put a whole Facebook thing out and signs on their door saying like, if you're just not welcome, because like their wait staff was getting so harassed.
My God.
Went on the offensive, which restaurants didn't used to have to do that. Like you would lose, they're like, we'd rather lose those customers and keep wait staff. So that I was happy to see that one, at least, establishment do that. So
yeah.
Awesome. Well, hey, thank you again very much for joining us tonight. And again, by the time this comes out, like this is exciting. You've got 10 days until Summer Always Hungry comes out. But by the time this airs, the book will be out. So again, I want to encourage everybody to go check that out. Her poetry is incredible. You heard some here tonight. So definitely support the book and every other author who's had a new book come out in 2020. It's a weird time. If you're not familiar with the industry, normally like Jihyun would be jet setting across the country right now, that might be a bit there would be some travel involved to read at bookstores and university campuses and stuff. And obviously that can't really happen right now. So help out preferably a local bookstore and your local poet. Thanks again for joining us tonight, Jihyun. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. And take care, everybody. We'll see you next time.